Some deaths are quick, some are merciful, but history hides punishments so cruel, so imaginative in their horror that they defy belief. Imagine being tied to a chair made of iron. Its entire surface, seat, floor and armrest is covered with sharp iron spikes, some reaching 5 centimeters in length, arranged in a methodical array designed to maximize suffering without causing a quick death. The victim is tied tightly, forced to sit on spikes that will pierce the flesh, but not deep enough to reach the vital organs. This is called Devil's Chair, also known as Judah's Chair. To understand the Devil's Chair, we must first grasp the broader context of judicial torture in medieval Europe and the beginning of the modern era. Torture was not a cruel aberration practiced by marginal sadists, but an official and legal part of justice systems throughout Europe. Roman law, rediscovered and intensively studied from the 12th century, included explicit provisions for the use of torture in obtaining confessions or testimonies. The logic was that confessions were the queen of evidence, and torture was a legitimate tool to extract it when other evidence proved insufficient. Medieval jurists developed elaborate codes regulating when, how, and against whom torture could be applied. Theoretically, there were limits. Torture could only be used when there was substantial preliminary evidence of guilt. It could not be applied arbitrarily. Confessions obtained under torture had to be voluntarily confirmed outside the torture chamber. And torture could not cause permanent mutilation or intentional death. In practice, these guarantees were often ignored. The Devil's Chair probably appeared in Germany or in the regions of the Holy Roman Empire during the 13th or 13th or 14th centuries, although a precise date is difficult due to the rarity of documents. Several surviving copies can be seen today in torture museums in Nuremberg, Rothenburg, Obdertauber and other European cities. Each chair was unique, built by local blacksmiths according to the specifications of the judicial or religious authorities. But the basic principle remained constant: a chair covered with spikes on which the victim was forced to sit, with entrails preventing any movement that could have eased the pressure. The number, length and arrangement of the spikes varied. Some chairs had short, densely grouped spikes, creating a surface of needles that pierced the flesh in hundreds of points. Others had longer, more spaced spikes, penetrating deeper but in fewer places. Some included special spikes positioned in particularly sensitive areas to maximize the pain. The process of use was meticulously cruel. The victim, often already weakened by imprisonment, hunger, or previous torture, was brought into the room. The mere sight of the chair was part of psychological torture, a technique called territio or terrorization. Many confessed to real or false crimes simply by seeing the instruments of torture. Those who did not confess were undressed, at least partially, so that the spikes penetrated directly into the skin. They were then forced to sit on the chair while the tortioners tied arms, legs, and often the torso with chains or leather straps. Once tied, each movement tore the flesh in new directions by the spikes. The victim was confronted with an impossible choice: remaining completely still, allowing the spikes to penetrate deeply under the weight of the body, or trying to ease the pressure by moving, causing tears and additional lacerations. The duration of the torture varied according to several factors: the seriousness of the crime, the victim's insistence to confess, and the cruelty or relative mercy of the interrogator. Trial records indicate sessions lasting from 1 hour to several days. In prolonged cases, the victim was permanently held on the chair, not allowed to eat, drink or sleep properly, adding deprivation to physical torment. The wounds caused by the spikes bled, infected and rusted. The pain intensified over time as the inflammation increased, and the damaged nerves sent more and more desperate signals to the brain. The combination of acute physical pain, exhaustion, psychological terror, and often delirium caused by the fever caused by infections broke even the strongest resistance. But physical torture was only a component. The Devil's Chair was often heated before use, burning the metal in addition to piercing the skin. Some variants included braziers placed under the chair, gradually heating the metal while the victim remained attached, turning the device into a combination of perforations and burns. A particularly horrible case occurred in Bamberg, Germany, in the year 1628. Johannes Junius, the mayor of the city, was accused of witchcraft during the hysteria that consumed the region. Despite his prominent position, he was arrested, interrogated, and tortured several times. In a letter to his daughter, which survived and is kept in the archives, Junius describes being placed on the devil's chair and subjected to other tortures. He wrote that he falsely confessed to a pact with the devil, and the participation of witches simply to stop the torture, knowing that the confession would lead to his execution, but preferring a quick death on the stake to a prolonged torture. He was burned alive a few weeks later. His letter shows in a devastating way how torture did not reveal the truth, but forced the victims to confess everything the interrogators wanted to hear. The effectiveness of the devil's chair and similar instruments to extract confessions was precisely the reason why they were so problematic. The confessions obtained under torture were notably unreliable. Innocent people confessed to crimes they had not committed. The accused made up accomplices, naming other people who were then arrested and tortured, creating a cascade of false accusations. Friedrich Spee, a German Jesuit priest who served as a confessor to women convicted of witchcraft at the beginning of the 17th century, wrote a treatise called Cautio Criminalis, published anonymously in 1631, arguing that torture was ineffective and unjust, producing only false confessions. His critique, along with the works of other reformers, gradually influenced opinion. The abolition of judicial torture in Europe was a long and unequal process. Prussia officially abolished torture in 1754 under Frederick the Great. France followed in 1788 during the revolutionary fervour. Other European states abolished torture in the 19th century, but legal abolition did not mean the immediate end of the practice. Official torture continued in many places, especially in colonial contexts where European authorities applied different laws to subjugated populations. And of course, torture never completely disappeared, reappearing in the totalitarian regimes of the 20th century and continuing in many countries to this day, although officially forbidden by international law. The devil's chair, in particular, disappeared from judicial use during the 18th century, when the Enlightenment brought legal reforms. Surviving specimens were preserved, some by cities proud of their judicial past, others by collectors fascinated by macabre instruments. In the 19th and 20th centuries, these chairs found a new life in the torture museums that flourished in European tourist cities. The legacy of the devil's chair goes beyond the history of a specific device. It represents a moment in Western civilization when religious and secular authorities believed that extreme bodily pain was a legitimate tool to reach the truth and maintain order. This belief was ultimately repudiated, at least officially, with the development of human rights, regular procedure, and constitutional prohibitions against cruel and unusual punishments. But the struggle continues. The debates on reinforced interrogations, the torture in the war against terrorism, and the treatment of prisoners in the 21st century demonstrate that the temptation to use pain to extract information or punish has not disappeared. The devil's chair serves as a historical reminder of where societies can slip when they allow the ends to justify the means.